I mean, even our black men, especially, we know you guys have been targeted since you've been here because you are strong people. You come from kings. You come from ruling countries, and they can't have strong people regardless. They can't have strong. And we as women, we had to keep you uplifted, keep you
Right.
going. We had to not only take care of you, but we had to take care of their family.
Right.
We had to take care of their family. And it's just like the last election. If it wasn't for the women getting out here doing the legwork, you wouldn't have a lot that you have today. This is why I have trouble with a lot of the younger generation, and I'm sounding like the old person that I am. But hey, this is what happens when you get old. You can look back. A lot of things that you have are due to what we went through.
Right.
A
Right.
lot of things that you can do now, we couldn't do, but because of the fight that we gave, you now have a life that we only dreamed of. I came from the generation when you couldn't walk into just any restaurant that you wanted to. I
And
came,
people don't realize how young the civil rights
yes,
movement is.
Right.
yes,
Right.
yes, yes. They don't realize that you haven't had this privilege that long.
Yeah. And now
Because
they're stripping it
I
away.
lived through that. I lived through the last part of the civil rights movement because the civil
People are
rights
calling you wise, Debbie.
no, I'm just, I'm just been through a lot, and I ain't gonna tell y'all. But it's and another thing, I don't. I'm gonna let Tony get into this because, but Bill, this is something that I think would be a good topic is the churches nowadays, the role
Well,
of the church.
it depends on which church you're talking about because the minute that um I'm not gonna, I mean, no one yell at me, but I have chosen to have my own relationship with God.
That's your
It's hard. It's hard for me to follow a church that thinks that Donald Trump is a savior. So, or sent from Christ.
Oh, that's
Uh,
not
I'm
a,
not
that.
talking
Well,
about
that's
that.
not all the
That's
church.
not a church. That's really not
Yeah.
a church.
well, or the Christian community. And I know that it's
That's
not.
not a Christian community.
I
They
know it's
think
not
they are, though,
ours.
but they think
I know it's not ours. Okay, so I get that. It's not, the first, it's not FANG, right? The first
Right.
African Methodist Episcopal. But I am going to have to kick Debbie off. Deborah is the star of the show today. No, she ain't.
Let her shine. Come on, Billy, let her shine.
hey, Bill, and they don't know I'm being nice and I'm being quiet.
Right? I'm not going to tell you what Nick said about you yesterday. I'll tell you that off the air.
But Nikki can't say nothing because
I didn't say nothing about you yesterday.
Hey, look, Nikki,
Billy's just starting some shit. That's all.
no, Nikki can't say nothing because like I said, I can't change his drawers, okay? So ain't nothing you can
But
say.
you changed Martin Luther King's drawers too, but that's okay.
Just about.
Tony.
Just about.
So going back to what Debbie said, just to clarify, you can't drink from our water, but you can drink our milk.
Yeah.
Is the fact that Black people could not use the same water fountains, but they could be wet nurses for
Wet nurse, yeah.
babies.
Right.
So a lot of times, the Black woman was breastfeeding the
Right.
white child, but we can't drink out of your water fountain.
Right. And that goes back to even the slavery, right? So,
Yeah.
that had been going on since slavery. So
Mhm.
then after slavery, you look at the Black woman who, was in that situation, in that same position, but still, taking care of the white family, but then having to go home and take care of her family, as
Yes.
well. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
just that, the strength and the resiliency of a black woman, You know, it's just incredible. You know, just thinking about history in general and what was being said about just the white backlash. And so that's been, you know, as Debbie was saying, that you know, that's just been a part of what has occurred throughout our history. You know, like history repeating itself.
Mhm.
You know, and when you say that, it's not so much always like the same thing happening, you know, in the
Exactly.
same type of
Yeah.
scenario or situation, but it's patterns. So there's
Yes.
specific patterns that repeat themselves, you know, in history. And I could see it in the work that I did on the Springfield, Illinois race riot of 1908. So, you know, I have some published work on the riot, and of course, because I'm from Springfield, and that's why, you know, I had a desire to write about it, and that was a part of my graduate study work, you know, that I did. And there's always been a white backlash. So going back to, you think about, you know, slavery, you know, Lincoln freeing the slaves and the amendments that were passed, you know, in order to keep us out of slavery. And then what happened right after that, you know, was the rise of the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
You know, and so it was like, okay, well, with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, let's have Reconstruction. So Reconstruction takes place. So what happens right after Reconstruction? Now you have Jim Crow. So, you know, at every move of any Black progress in the history of this country, there's always been a white backlash after that.
Yes.
Like,
Hey, Tony,
yes,
have you ever read the book, The Invention of the White Race?
I have.
What do you think about that book?
I enjoyed it.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I read it in actually I was in was I in grad school? No, I was in undergrad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak on that, Nick or Tony? What
Well-
I've never read it.
Well, basically, what it starts as is when the slaves started coming over here, they just weren't regular, you know, grab them up. They grab builders, they grab people that knew how to plant.
Right.
That's what the colonists wanted when they came over here. And they would work together in the same area with the Irish for the most part,
Right.
because England had laws against the Irish, and they call them the Hibernicus, the unfree. And so the black slaves and the white people that worked together, they cohabitated, okay, until they needed more and more. So they would press them, things would get harder on them, until the blacks and the whites united and started revolting like they did down in South America and around the islands, revolted against their masters. Okay. So once that happened, and then the white man said, okay, we got to stop this. So what they did, they gave their white counterparts the privileges to come into the shops, to walk on the sidewalks where they weren't allowed to before, based on the color of their skin. So prior to that time, that was in the 1600s, there was no thing as white people. That's where it came from.
Right.
So what you're saying is that the Irish were basically the same as the slave at
Right.
a
Right.
certain point.
Yes.
Mhm.
They
Right.
were
And then-
enslaved. They were enslaved just like
Indentured servitude,
no.
Right.
but
They
it was
were
really
enslaved.
like slavery.
They were enslaved, and
Right. They were enslaved, but they could buy out, they could
they could
get
buy
out of slavery, whereas they took blacks and said, no, you've got to stay here.
and it was because of the color. And a quick side note of that, if you want to know why a lot of blacks have red hair, it's because of the intermixing of the Irish and the blacks at that time.
Right.
Because we were both enslaved.
Yeah, the other thing about that was the Pope at the time, I can't remember, I think it was Pius or something, can't remember. He wrote bulls here, and because the Congress, they wanted them to speak on how the Pope thought about slavery in the U.S. And he told them, he said, no, slavery's bad. It's got to stop. But the bishops, the white bishops, and that's how come, you know, although I'm Catholic, that's how come there's no a lot of black nuns or a lot of black priests that are from America, is because they went to Congress and said, the Pope said, he was against the expansion of slavery. He wasn't against slavery, right? So they misrepresented what he said.
Okay, that's very interesting. Tony, I think my question to you was the defunding of education,
Yeah.
and then the removal of our history.
Right. Well,
Did you hear that they're taking from in DC, from the African American Museum, they're taking anything about slavery out of it? How the hell are you? How are you going to remove it?
They're trying to
Yeah.
defund the museum itself. They're trying to get rid of the museum.
I could see that. I didn't know that was happening. That must have been recent. We were, like I said, when we were in DC a month ago, we were just there. We went to the
about
museum.
when it started, Tony. That's about when it started.
Right.
And
about a week ago.
The leader
Wow.
of the African American Museum told them they can defund us if they want to because we don't need.
We'll pay for it.
Yeah. Because the majority of the funding of that museum is by donation, and we are the donors. Okay, they can take away their money. We have people who can step up and meet that.
Right.
Yeah,
Because the federal funding already that supported it, supported the building of it. Wasn't like it wasn't complete, right? So there was donors, like Black entertainers that gave, millions,
athletes and stuff.
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
who are making money.
Right.
We have people who have money in this country. It's
And they're not just entertainers, and they're not just
you're right.
basketball stars.
We
right?
have entrepreneurs. We have people who are in these top jobs of these businesses. It's not publicized. They don't want you to know. And this is another thing that needs to be. We need to celebrate people within our community, other than the athletes, the entertainers, and the actors, so that people know that there is light outside. You don't have to be a pro ball. You don't have to get up there on the stage.
Be a route.
Right. There is other ways of when I'm here in Atlanta, I just have to say this. I feel so good here because
it's a Black city.
Well, you walk around and you see these homes and these businesses and stuff. These are people of color. Back in the day, Chicago used to be like that. You could walk in. When we would go to Chicago, we go up there. I didn't see Caucasian people. Southside was basically black-owned businesses, black banks. We ain't gonna go to what it's now, but here, I feel so comfortable here. And even though there's a lot of mixture here in this area,
which is fine.
They work together. Work together. And this is what this country should be, is what they have here in Atlanta. People work together for the betterment of their community. They don't care what color you are. As long as you're keeping this community alive, it should be, then okay, we'll take you. We'll do whatever we want to. And this comes from people getting that education.
Right. Which, let's go back to Tony, because I've been waiting for him to answer for a while. So Debbie, I'm gonna put you on mute for a minute.
Is that a good segue?
No, don't put Debbie on mute. Let Debbie go. Let her cook. And so your question, can I call you Billy? I know.
You can call me. We're family.
I know
my family calls me Billy.
Billy. Yeah. So okay. So Billy, based on from your question, like they've been trying to. So the Republicans have been trying to defund the Department of Education since Jimmy Carter made the Department of Education back in 1979. So there wasn't always a Department of Education. Yeah. So that's one thing. So they've been trying to defund it ever since then. And so what they're doing though, it's really complicated, because can they truly eliminate it? And they can't eliminate it without, I think it's like 60 votes from the Senate to actually eliminate it completely. So I don't think
Isn't
that's
it
going to.
the Department of Education was done by Congress, and only Congress can
Right.
get rid of the Department of Education.
Right.
It has to go through Congress.
Right. And so they need those votes in order to
Yes.
eliminate it completely.
And they're not going to get it. Then they won't get
I don't think they're going to
No.
get 60, from the Senate based on just how things are. Even if they were to get a couple of Democratic votes, outside of the majority that they have, it's not going to get them to 60. Now, with that being said, what they can do is make it miserable. And that
Yes.
is where you get into the part of the funding.
Yes.
And so, because the funding goes through, the Appropriations Committee. So the Appropriations Committee is the one that's funding all these programs and projects and all these things. And if they can get folks on the Appropriations Committee to cut line items, then that puts the Department of Ed in a tough situation to be able to do the things that they were already doing. So, for example, I was on a project, recently where I was, we were contracted with the U.S. Department of Education to do technical assistance for states on a particular grant. And the thing was, each and every day, we weren't sure if the funding was going to be there or what was going to happen with it. But the work that we were involved in is career technical education. And that's big, like apprenticeship programs, certifications, those sort of things, within HVAC, all the trade areas. That's big in the Trump administration. They want to make sure that they maintain that. So that wasn't so much of an issue or a big concern. But in terms of staffing, they were starting to lose staff, because of some of the cuts that were starting to occur. And they're not finished cutting. And one of the things they want to do is they want to send the funding to states, because they're like, well, states, they're on the ground, they know what's happening, those sort of things. And so let's send the funding to the states. But what's going to happen with that is when they send that funding to the states, the states are going to put it into block grants.
Right.
Block
You don't know
grant,
where it's going to go.
right. You don't know where it's going to go.
Okay, so stop right there.
Yeah.
I'm not that smart, so let's go into telling